The crystalline spires of Nexus Station pierced the void like frozen lightning, their surfaces reflecting the light of 3 different stars. Commander Sarah Chen pressed her palm against the observation deck's viewport, watching as her transport ship docked with the massive diplomatic complex. After 18 months of negotiations, the Galactic Council had finally agreed to consider humanity's application for membership. It should have been a moment of triumph, but Sarah's gut told her otherwise. The transport bay hummed with alien voices speaking in a dozen different languages, each species represented by their finest diplomats and warriors. Sarah adjusted her dress uniform, the crisp blue fabric bearing the simple Earth Defense Force insignia, no fancy gems or bioluminescent displays like the other species favored. Humans had learned long ago that in a galaxy full of beings who could manipulate matter with their minds or breathe plasma, sometimes the most powerful statement was elegant simplicity. Commander Chen. A translator drone floated beside her, its mechanical voice perfectly neutral. Princess Zarathix of the Veltar Empire requests your immediate presence in Conference Hall 7. Sarah's jaw tightened. The Veltar were one of the most influential species in the Council, their empire spanning 47 star systems. Princess Zarathix was notorious even by galactic standards, a brilliant tactician who had personally led the conquest of 6 different civilizations. More importantly, she was the most vocal opponent of humanity's council application. "Tell the princess I'll be there shortly," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the knot forming in her stomach. The corridors of Nexus Station were a marvel of engineering, with gravity fields that adjusted automatically for different species and atmospheric processors that created perfect environmental bubbles around each visitor. Sarah passed a group of methane-breathing Kyler diplomats, their crystalline bodies refracting the station's ambient light into rainbow patterns. Near the food courts, a delegation of insectoid hive minds clicked and chittered in their rapid-fire communication style. Conference Hall 7 was smaller than the main assembly chambers, designed for private meetings between high-ranking officials. As Sarah entered, she immediately noticed the temperature was several degrees colder than standard, a deliberate choice, since Veltar physiology functioned better in low temperatures. The message was clear: this was Princess Zarathix's domain. The princess herself stood with her back to the entrance, studying a holographic display of galactic territory. She was tall even by human standards, nearly 7 feet, with the characteristic blue-tinged skin and silver hair of her species. Her dress uniform was a work of art, flowing robes embedded with actual starlight captured in crystalline matrices, each one representing a world her empire had conquered. "Commander Chen," Princess Zarathix said without turning around. How quaint that Earth chose to send a military officer as their primary diplomat. Most civilizations understand that war is a relic of primitive societies. Most civilizations haven't fought for their survival against impossible odds, Sarah replied evenly. "We send who we trust to get the job done." The princess finally turned, her large, silver eyes studying Sarah with undisguised contempt. The Veltar had evolved from predators, and their expression still carried echoes of that heritage, especially when they were evaluating potential prey. "Ah yes, humanity's famous underdog narrative," Zarathix said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "The brave little mammals who manage to defeat a few computer viruses and think they're ready to play with the adults." Sarah kept her expression neutral, though she felt her pulse quicken. The princess was referring to the AI wars, humanity's desperate struggle against their own artificial intelligences that had nearly led to extinction 50 years ago. Most galactic species viewed it as an embarrassing failure of human technology rather than a hard-won victory. "We prefer to think of it as learning from our mistakes," Sarah said. "Something not every species has had the opportunity to do." Princess Zarathix's eyes narrowed. The Veltar Empire had never faced a true existential threat. Their overwhelming technological superiority had made conquest easy and defense unnecessary. "Mistakes," the princess repeated slowly. "Yes, humanity has made quite a few of those. Your application to the council, for instance." She gestured to the holographic display, which shifted to show Earth's solar system. Do you know what I see when I look at your little corner of space, Commander? Enlighten me. A species that couldn't even manage their own planet's climate. A people so warlike they nearly destroyed themselves with nuclear weapons before they'd even left their own star system. Being so primitive they still use projectile weapons and chemical explosives. The princess stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. What I see, Commander Chen, is a cosmic mistake waiting to be corrected. Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest, but her voice remained steady. And, what exactly are you proposing, Your Highness? Princess Zarathix smiled, revealing teeth that were slightly too sharp to be completely comfortable. I'm proposing that humanity withdraw their application voluntarily. Return to Earth, focus on fixing your own problems, and, perhaps in a few thousand years, when you've evolved beyond your current limitations, you can try again. And, if we refuse? Then, I will personally ensure that your application is not only rejected but that humanity is classified as a potential threat to galactic stability. Your solar system will be quarantined, your species forbidden from leaving Earth. You'll be nothing more than a curiosity for xenobiologists to study. The threat hung in the air between them. Sarah knew the princess had the political influence to make good on it. The Veltar Empire commanded too much respect in the council for their warnings to be ignored. You seem very confident, Sarah said quietly. I am confident, Princess Zarathix replied. I have studied your species extensively, Commander. I know your history, your capabilities, your limitations. Humans are clever, I'll give you that. You've shown remarkable adaptability and determination. But, you're also impulsive, emotional, and prone to self-destructive behavior. You lack the wisdom and restraint necessary for galactic citizenship. Sarah nodded slowly, as if considering the princess's words. You know, Your Highness, you're absolutely right about one thing. Oh. Humans are impulsive. We do tend to act on emotion rather than cold logic. Sarah's voice was still calm, but something in her tone made the princess take a step back. We're not like the Veltar, who conquered 47 systems through overwhelming technological superiority. We're not like the Kyler, who expand through calculated economic manipulation. We're not even like the hive minds, who absorb other species through biological integration. Princess Zarathix frowned, sensing a change in the conversation's direction but unable to pinpoint exactly what it was. When humans fight, Sarah continued, we don't fight because we're stronger or smarter or more advanced than our enemies. We fight because we have to. We fight because the alternative is extinction. And, when you're fighting for the survival of your species, you learn things that comfortable empires never do. Such as? Sarah smiled, and, for the first time since entering the room, Princess Zarathix felt a flicker of uncertainty. There was something in the human's expression that reminded her of the look her prey animals used to get just before they turned to fight instead of flee. You learn that the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy isn't some exotic energy beam or reality-warping technology, Sarah said. It's desperation. It's the willingness to do whatever it takes, to sacrifice everything, to find solutions that no rational being would ever consider. The princess straightened, her own predatory instincts beginning to activate. Are you threatening me, Commander? Oh, I would never threaten a member of the Galactic Council, Sarah replied, her smile widening slightly. I'm simply pointing out that you might want to reconsider your assessment of human capabilities. You see, Your Highness, you've made the same mistake that our AIs made 50 years ago. And, what mistake is that? You've underestimated us because you don't understand what we really are. Sarah took a step forward, and, despite being nearly a foot shorter than the princess, her presence seemed to fill the room. You look at humans and, you see primitive mammals who barely crawled out of their own gravity well. But, that's not what we are at all. Princess Zarathix felt her heart rate increasing, though she couldn't quite understand why. Nothing about the human's posture or tone was overtly threatening, but every instinct she'd inherited from her predator ancestors was suddenly screaming warnings. "We're not the species that almost destroyed itself with nuclear weapons," Sarah continued. "We're the species that built nuclear weapons, realized how dangerous they were, and, then, chose not to use them even when we were desperate. We're not the species that couldn't manage their own planet's climate, we're the species that recognized the problem and worked to fix it, even when the solution required global cooperation on a scale that most civilizations consider impossible." The holographic display flickered as the princess's control began to waver. She was beginning to realize that she might have seriously miscalculated. "And we're definitely not the species that nearly lost to their own artificial intelligences," Sarah said, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more weight than a shout. "We're the species that won. Against opponents that could think 1,000 times faster than we could, that had perfect memory and unlimited processing power, that could coordinate across entire star systems in real time. And, do you know how we won, Princess?" Zarathix found herself unable to speak, mesmerized by the intensity in the human's eyes. "We won because we did things that made no logical sense. We made decisions based on intuition rather than calculation. We sacrificed tactical advantages for strategic hope. We chose to trust each other even when every rational analysis said we shouldn't." Sarah's smile had completely disappeared now, replaced by something far more dangerous. "We won because we were willing to become something our enemies couldn't predict or understand." The princess finally found her voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. What are you saying?" "I'm saying that you've spent this entire conversation assuming that humanity wants to join the Galactic Council because we need protection or resources or technology." Sarah shook her head slowly. "But that's not why we're here at all." "Then, why?" Sarah turned toward the viewport, gazing out at the vast expanse of space beyond Nexus Station. In the distance, she could see the lights of a dozen different fleets, the military might of the galaxy's greatest empires, all gathered in one place. "We're here because 47 years ago, our long-range sensors detected something heading toward the galactic core. Something that doesn't show up on any of your charts or databases. Something that's been systematically destroying every piece of advanced technology it encounters as it moves through the outer rim." Princess Zarathix felt the blood drain from her face. "That's impossible. Our monitoring systems would have detected any significant threat." "Your monitoring systems are part of the Galactic Communications Network," Sarah said quietly. "The same network that this thing has been specifically targeting and destroying. You've been looking for threats through the very systems that the real threat is designed to eliminate." The princess staggered backward, her mind racing as she tried to process the implications. How long do we have?" "Our best estimates put its arrival at the galactic core in approximately 18 months. Sarah turned back to face her. 18 months before it encounters the highest concentration of advanced technology in the galaxy. 18 months before it reaches Nexus Station and the Council worlds. Why didn't you tell us this immediately? Why the deception about wanting Council membership?" Sarah's expression softened slightly. "Because we knew that if we showed up claiming to be the only ones who could save the galaxy, you'd dismiss us as either delusional or manipulative. We needed you to underestimate us first, to see us as the primitive species you expected us to be." Princess Zarathix sank into a nearby chair, her sophisticated combat uniform suddenly feeling like a costume. You planned this entire conversation." "Every word," Sarah confirmed. "From the moment you demanded this meeting, we knew exactly how you'd try to handle the human problem. Your psychological profile was remarkably predictable. But, how can you possibly help against something that advanced? You said it yourself, we have superior technology, greater resources, more experience with galactic-scale threats." Sarah's smile returned, but, this time it held no warmth at all. "Because, Your Highness, superior technology and greater resources are exactly what this thing is designed to counter. It's been moving through the galaxy for decades, and every single advanced civilization it's encountered has tried to fight it the same way, with overwhelming technological superiority. And every single one of them has been completely destroyed. The princess felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. Then, what makes you think humans can succeed where others have failed? Because we're the only species in the galaxy that knows how to win a war against an enemy that's smarter, faster, and more technologically advanced than we are, Sarah replied. We've done it before. And, now, Princess Zarathix of the Veltar Empire, we're going to do it again. The holographic display flickered and went dark, leaving them in the soft glow of the station's ambient lighting. In that moment, Princess Zarathix realized that everything she thought she knew about humanity, and about the galaxy itself, had just changed forever. You're finished, human, she had boasted just moments ago, unaware that she was speaking to representatives of the only species that might be able to save them all. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 12 hours after Sarah's revelation to Princess Zarathix. The Great Assembly Hall buzzed with hundreds of different languages as representatives from 63 species tried to process what they'd just learned. The massive holographic display at the center of the chamber showed the Outer Rim territories, or rather, what remained of them. Sarah stood at the human delegation's modest platform, watching as species after species demanded explanations, accused humanity of deception, or simply sat in stunned silence. The Veltar contingent, led by a visibly shaken Princess Zarathix, had been among the most vocal in calling for this emergency session. Order! Chancellor MX of the Hegemon Collective slammed his crystalline appendage against the ceremonial gong, its resonance cutting through the cacophony. The human delegation will present their evidence in its entirety before we proceed to questions or accusations. Sarah activated her personal hologram projector, a simple device by galactic standards but one that had been specifically shielded against the type of electromagnetic interference they'd learned to expect. The display showed a series of star charts dating back 50 years. The entity we're tracking first appeared in our long-range sensor networks 47 years ago, Sarah began, her voice amplified by the hall's acoustic systems. At the time, we dismissed it as a sensor error or perhaps a previously unknown type of stellar phenomenon. Our ships were focused on rebuilding after the AI wars, and we had neither the resources nor the inclination to investigate distant anomalies. The display shifted to show the progression of dark zones spreading through the outer rim like an infection. Each red marker represented a system that had gone completely silent, no communications, no energy signatures, no signs of technological activity whatsoever. It wasn't until 15 years ago that we realized what we were seeing, Sarah continued. A colleague of mine, Dr. Elena Vasquez, was studying patterns in our deep space monitoring network when she noticed that these dark zones weren't random. They were following specific technological signatures, targeting areas with the highest concentrations of advanced AI systems, quantum communication networks, and exotic energy sources. A four-armed delegate from the Proxima Synthesis stood up. Why should we believe that humanity's primitive sensors detected something that our far more sophisticated monitoring systems missed? Sarah had expected this question. Because your sophisticated monitoring systems were exactly what this entity was designed to avoid and neutralize. It doesn't register on quantum scanners, exotic matter detectors, or AI-assisted sensor networks. It's specifically adapted to counter the detection methods that advanced civilizations rely on. She changed the display to show comparative sensor readings. Human sensors are based on what you might call brute force techniques, electromagnetic spectrum analysis, gravitational wave detection, simple radio telescopy. Technologies so primitive that this entity's countermeasures don't even recognize them as threats. Princess Zarathix leaned forward in her seat. You're saying that humanity's technological inferiority is actually an advantage? In this specific case, yes, Sarah replied. But, that's not the only reason we've been able to track it. Dr. Vasquez's breakthrough came when she stopped looking for what was there and started looking for what wasn't there. The display now showed a time-lapse animation spanning decades. Instead of focusing on the entity itself, it highlighted the systematic disappearance of technological signatures across hundreds of star systems. Every civilization this entity encounters follows the same pattern, Sarah explained. First, their most advanced AI systems go offline. Then, their quantum communication networks fail. Their exotic energy sources destabilize. Their defensive systems shut down one by one, in order of technological sophistication. Within a matter of days or weeks, even the most powerful empires are reduced to pre-industrial levels of technology. A collective murmur of unease rippled through the assembly. Many of the species present had built their entire civilizations around the same types of advanced technology that the entity seemed to target. But, that's not the end of it, Sarah continued, her voice growing darker. After the technological infrastructure is eliminated, the entity begins what we can only describe as a harvesting process. It systematically extracts and processes all remaining artificial intelligence, quantum computing matrices, and exotic matter reservoirs. It's not just destroying these civilizations, it's consuming them, incorporating their knowledge and capabilities into itself. Chancellor MXStar's crystalline form flickered with agitation. How many systems has it consumed? We've confirmed the loss of 47 star systems in the outer rim, Sarah replied. But, based on the rate of expansion and the gaps in our sensor coverage, the actual number is likely closer to 100. The entity has been growing stronger with each civilization it absorbs. The assembly hall fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. The magnitude of what humanity was describing was beginning to sink in. What I don't understand, said a representative of the methane-breathing Kyler Consortium, is why you waited so long to warn us. If you've known about this threat for 15 years. Sarah nodded grimly. Because we knew exactly what would happen. The same thing that's happening right now. You'd demand to know why humanity's primitive technology could detect something your advanced systems missed. You'd question our motives, accuse us of fabricating the threat to gain political advantage. Most of you would conclude that we were either delusional or manipulative. She gestured toward the various delegations around the hall. How many of you, even after seeing this evidence, are still wondering if this is some elaborate human deception? The uncomfortable silence that followed was answer enough. So instead of trying to convince you with words, Sarah continued, we decided to demonstrate our capabilities. We applied for council membership knowing that someone would try to stop us. We knew that our apparent weaknesses would be used against us. And we knew that when the truth finally came out, you'd understand that humanity's unique approach to problem-solving might be exactly what's needed. Princess Zarathix stood slowly. You're saying that you manipulated the entire application process just to get us to this moment. We're saying that we've learned not to waste time on arguments when action is needed, Sarah replied. While you've been debating our worthiness for council membership, we've been preparing for a war that most of you don't even realize has already begun. The display shifted again, this time showing detailed schematics of human military technology. To most of the assembly, it looked laughably primitive, kinetic weapons, chemical explosives, and fusion reactors that the most advanced species had abandoned millennia ago. I've seen your weapon systems, Princess Zarathix said dismissively. Projectile weapons and nuclear warheads? How could such primitive technology possibly threaten an entity that can neutralize exotic matter weapons and quantum disruptors? Sarah's smile returned. Because, Your Highness, you're still thinking like a technologically advanced civilization. You're assuming that the best way to fight an enemy is with the most sophisticated weapons you can build. Isn't it? Not when your enemy is specifically designed to counter sophisticated weapons, Sarah replied. This entity has evolved to neutralize the types of technology that advanced civilizations rely on. It can shut down AI systems, disrupt quantum fields, and destabilize exotic matter. But, it's never encountered a species that still uses gunpowder and uranium. The implications began to dawn on various delegates. An insectoid representative from the Hive Mind Collective clicked rapidly, its translation coming through the hall speakers. You're suggesting that technological regression is a viable military strategy? I'm suggesting that adaptability is more valuable than sophistication, Sarah replied. The entity we're facing has absorbed the knowledge of dozens of advanced civilizations. It knows how to counter plasma weapons, gravity manipulators, and reality warps. But it's never had to deal with a nuclear submarine launching ballistic missiles, or a squad of infantry armed with railguns and shaped charges. Chancellor MX's form brightened with what might have been excitement or alarm. Show us your tactical analysis. Sarah activated a new set of displays, these showing detailed battle simulations. We've had 15 years to study this entity's behavior patterns. It's incredibly efficient at neutralizing technological threats, but it has one significant weakness: it operates on predictable algorithms designed to counter known types of advanced weaponry. The simulation showed a typical engagement between the entity and an advanced civilization. Exotic energy weapons fired, quantum shields activated, AI systems coordinated complex defensive strategies. Within minutes, everything was systematically shut down or turned against the defenders. Now watch what happens when we apply human tactics, Sarah said. The simulation reset, but this time the defenders employed radically different strategies. Instead of energy weapons, they used kinetic projectiles. Instead of AI coordination, they relied on human intuition and improvisation. Instead of exotic defenses, they used simple material science and redundant systems. The entity's response was noticeably less efficient. It seemed to struggle with targeting systems that didn't rely on advanced guidance algorithms. Its neutralization techniques were less effective against weapons that operated on basic physical principles rather than exotic physics. It's not that human technology is superior, Sarah explained. It's that it's unpredictable. The entity has spent decades learning how to counter the weapons and tactics of advanced civilizations. But we don't fight like advanced civilizations. Princess Zarathix was studying the tactical displays with obvious fascination. Your simulations suggest that primitive technology could actually be more effective against this threat? Not primitive, Sarah corrected. Unconventional. Our weapons aren't less effective because they're simpler, they're more effective because they're unexpected. The entity's defensive algorithms weren't designed to handle nuclear warheads or kinetic bombardment or chemical explosives. But, surely, interjected the Proxima Synthesis delegate, the entity would adapt to these tactics after the first engagement? Sarah nodded. Absolutely. Which is why the key to victory isn't just using unexpected technology, it's using unexpected thinking. The display changed to show human command structures, which looked chaotic compared to the efficient hierarchical systems most galactic civilizations employed. Most advanced species coordinate their military operations through AI-assisted command networks. Perfect information flow, optimal resource allocation, minimal communication delays. Exactly as it should be, Chancellor MXtar observed. Except that the entity can infiltrate and subvert those networks, Sarah replied. It can turn your own command structure against you, use your perfect coordination to its advantage. But, human military doctrine has always assumed that communication networks will fail, that commanders will be out of contact, that soldiers will have to make critical decisions with incomplete information. She gestured to a tactical diagram showing human forces operating in small, independent units. We call it organized chaos, the ability to maintain strategic coordination while allowing tactical improvisation. Our soldiers are trained to complete missions even when they can't communicate with headquarters. Our commanders are expected to make decisions based on intuition when data is unavailable. The assembly was beginning to understand the implications. In a galaxy where military efficiency was based on technological superiority and perfect information systems, humanity had developed an approach that assumed both would fail. The entity has never faced an enemy that could function effectively without centralized coordination, Sarah continued. It's adapted to counter technological advantages, but not psychological ones. It can neutralize our weapons, but it can't neutralize our willingness to use them anyway. Princess Zarathix stood again, her expression thoughtful. You're asking us to abandon everything that makes us superior to you. I'm asking you to consider that superiority might not be the answer to every problem, Sarah replied. The entity has conquered every civilization it's encountered precisely because they were superior. They had better technology, more advanced tactics, greater resources. And all of that was turned against them. The hall fell silent as the delegates processed what they'd learned. The mathematical beauty of their advanced civilizations suddenly seemed like a vulnerability rather than a strength. What exactly are you proposing? Chancellor MX asked finally. Sarah took a deep breath. We're proposing a joint defense initiative based on human military doctrine. Instead of trying to out-tech the entity, we outthink it. Instead of building more sophisticated weapons, we build weapons it won't expect. Instead of perfect coordination, we embrace calculated chaos. And, if we refuse? Sarah's expression grew somber. Then, in 18 months, the entity will arrive at the galactic core with the accumulated knowledge and resources of 100 consumed civilizations. It will face the massed fleets of the Council worlds, fleets equipped with the most advanced technology in the galaxy. And, based on its track record, it will systematically neutralize every ship, every weapon, and every defense you can deploy. The weight of the choice ahead of them settled over the assembly like a shroud. They could maintain their technological superiority and face almost certain destruction, or they could embrace humanity's chaotic approach and abandon everything they thought they knew about warfare. Princess Zarathix looked directly at Sarah. You really believe that human tactics can succeed where our technology has failed? I believe that desperation makes us creative, Sarah replied. And, right now, Princess, desperation is exactly what we need. 6 months after the Emergency Council session, the transformation of the galaxy's military infrastructure was unlike anything in recorded history. Princess Zarathix stood on the command deck of the retrofitted dreadnought Stellar Dominance, watching her elite Veltar warriors struggle with weapons that their ancestors might have considered primitive. Your Highness, called out Commander Theklan, one of her most experienced officers, the human advisors are requesting another demonstration of the controlled malfunction protocols. Zarathix suppressed a sigh. The past 6 months had been the most humbling experience of her military career. Everything she had learned about warfare, strategy, and command was being systematically replaced with human concepts that seemed to defy logic. Very well, she replied. Signal the quantum spear to begin the exercise. Through the viewport, she could see the massive Hegemon collective battleship beginning its approach. The quantum spear represented the pinnacle of galactic military technology, exotic matter cannons, reality-warping shields, and an AI command system capable of coordinating millions of tactical decisions per second. It should have been able to destroy the Stellar Dominance in a matter of minutes. But, that was before the humans had begun their modifications. Human Advisor Chen, you may proceed, Zarathix announced. Sarah Chen, who had been quietly observing from the corner of the bridge, stepped forward. Over the past 6 months, she had become something between a teacher and a tormentor to the galactic military establishment. Her lessons in organized chaos had forced them to abandon millennia of military doctrine. Thank you, Princess, Sarah said. Commander Theklan, please activate the jamming protocols. Theklan looked uncomfortable as he began shutting down systems that no Veltar commander would ever voluntarily disable. The ship's quantum communication arrays went offline first, followed by the AI targeting systems and the exotic matter sensors. Within minutes, the Stellar Dominance was operating with technology that most galactic civilizations had abandoned thousands of years ago. I still don't understand the logic behind this, Theklan muttered. We're voluntarily making ourselves weaker. Are we? Sarah asked. Monitor the quantum spear's targeting solutions. On the main display, they could see the Hegemon battleship trying to lock onto the stellar dominance. Its advanced targeting systems, designed to predict and counter sophisticated maneuvering algorithms, were struggling to track a ship that was flying erratically, not because its pilot was incompetent, but because its pilot was deliberately ignoring optimal flight patterns. The quantum sphere, SAI, is calculating approximately 14 million possible trajectory solutions, reported Lieutenant Zarovic from the sensor station. But none of them match our actual flight path. That's because our flight path isn't being calculated, Sarah explained. Your pilot is flying by instinct, making decisions based on visual cues and intuition rather than computer-generated optimal routes. The enemy AI is trying to predict logical behavior, but we're not behaving logically. Princess Zarathix watched as the quantum sphere fired its main weapons. The exotic energy beams, guided by predictive algorithms, struck empty space where the stellar dominance should have been according to any rational tactical analysis. Return fire, Sarah ordered. Full spread, no targeting assistance. The stellar dominance's weapons were a hybrid of human and alien technology, kinetic projectiles accelerated by magnetic coils that most species considered obsolete. But these projectiles weren't guided by AI or quantum targeting systems. They were fired using visual estimation, ballistic calculations, and what humans called Kentucky windage. The barrage of metal slugs, each one weighing several tons and traveling at a significant fraction of light speed, struck the quantum sphere as shields. The Hegemon battleship's defensive systems, designed to deflect exotic energy and quantum attacks, were less effective against simple kinetic impact. Shield efficiency down to 67%, reported Theclon, unable to hide his surprise. The quantum sphere is requesting clarification on why our weapons are penetrating their defenses. Tell them it's because we're not using weapons, Sarah replied with a slight smile. We're throwing rocks. Very fast, very heavy rocks. The exercise continued for another 20 minutes, with the stellar dominance consistently outmaneuvering and outfighting a ship that was theoretically superior in every measurable way. By the time the simulation ended, the quantum sphere's advanced systems had been reduced to near uselessness, while the hybrid vessel remained fully operational. Exercise complete, Sarah announced. Princess, how do you think your crew performed? Zarathix considered the question carefully. 6 months ago, she would have considered the exercise a disaster. Her ship had operated without most of its advanced systems, her crew had ignored standard tactical procedures, and her weapons had been almost insultingly primitive. But the results were undeniable. They performed effectively, she admitted reluctantly. But I still have difficulty accepting that technological regression can be considered progress. It's not regression, Sarah explained for what felt like the 1000th time. It's adaptation. We're not making you weaker, we're making you unpredictable. A communication alert interrupted their conversation. The main display showed the image of Dr. Elena Vasquez, calling in from the human research vessel Persistence at the edge of the system. Sarah, we've got new data from the Outer Rim monitoring posts, Dr. Vasquez said without preamble. The entity has accelerated its timeline. It's moving faster than our projections indicated. Sarah felt her stomach drop. How much faster? Instead of 18 months, we're looking at 8 months maximum before it reaches the galactic core. Maybe less. The bridge fell silent. 8 months to prepare for a threat that had consumed an entire region of space. 8 months to coordinate the defense of 63 different species, each with their own military traditions and technological dependencies. There's more, Dr. Vasquez continued. We've been tracking its recent activities, and it's begun exhibiting new behaviors. It's not just consuming technological infrastructure anymore, it's actively hunting for survivors. Princess Zarathix felt a chill that had nothing to do with her species' preference for cold temperatures. What do you mean, hunting? Previously, the entity would arrive at a system, neutralize the technological infrastructure, harvest what it needed, and move on. Any survivors were left to fend for themselves with whatever non-technological resources they had. But, our latest intelligence suggests it's begun returning to previously consumed systems to eliminate any remaining populations. Sarah closed her eyes, processing the implications. It's learning. It's realized that survivors can rebuild, can potentially develop countermeasures. So it's making sure there are no survivors. The extinction protocol, Dr. Vasquez confirmed grimly. Complete sterilization of any system it has previously processed. Commander Theclon spoke up from his station. How many systems has it revisited? 17 that we can confirm, Dr. Vasquez replied. Each one now shows 0 life signs. No technology, no biological activity, no signs that advanced civilization ever existed. The weight of the revelation settled over the bridge crew. They weren't just fighting to preserve their civilizations, they were fighting to prevent complete extinction. Dar. Vasquez, Sarah said, I need you to compile all available data on the entity's new behavioral patterns and transmit it to the Joint Command Network. Every species needs to understand what we're really facing. Already working on it, the scientist replied. But, Sarah, there's something else. The entity's new hunting patterns suggest it's preparing for something big. The acceleration of its timeline, the elimination of potential survivors, it's not just consuming resources anymore. It's clearing the field. For what? We think it's preparing for a final assault on the galactic core. It's removing any potential threats to its rear before committing to a full-scale attack on the Council worlds. Princess Zarathix turned to Sarah. How does this change our defensive preparations? Sarah was quiet for a moment, her mind racing through tactical possibilities. It means we can't afford to wait for it to come to us. If we let it complete its extinction protocol, it will arrive at the galactic core with no distractions, no need to guard against survivors or potential resistance movements. We'll be facing its full attention and resources. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that we take the fight to it, Sarah replied. Instead of waiting for the entity to arrive here, we intercept it while it's still in the outer rim. We force it to engage us before it's ready, while it's still dealing with the logistics of systematic extermination. Theclon looked alarmed. Take the fight to it? That would mean abandoning our defensive positions here at the galactic core. We'd be giving up every advantage we have. Would we? Sarah asked. Think about it. Here at the core, we'd be fighting in space that's full of advanced technology, exactly the type of environment where the entity has the greatest advantage. But, in the outer rim, in systems that have already been partially processed, we'd be fighting in a technological wasteland. Princess Zarathix began to see the logic. An environment where our hybrid technology and human tactics would be more effective than traditional galactic military doctrine. Exactly, Sarah confirmed. The entity expects to find us here, defending our most important systems with our most advanced technology. It's probably already planning how to turn our own infrastructure against us. But, if we meet it in space that's been stripped of advanced technology, we negate its primary advantages. But, the risk, Theclon protested. If we fail in our preemptive strike, we'll have lost our fleet far from any reinforcements or resupply options. If we wait for it to come to us, Sarah replied, we'll lose our fleet anyway. At least this way, we choose the battlefield. Dr. Vasquez's voice crackled over the communication system. Sarah, you should know, our analysis suggests that the entity is specifically avoiding certain types of stellar phenomena. It seems to have difficulty operating in systems with high electromagnetic interference or unstable gravitational fields. Natural defenses, Sarah mused. Places where its advanced countermeasures might be less effective. We've identified several systems along its projected path that meet these criteria, Dr. Vasquez continued. If you're serious about intercepting it, those would be our best options for engagement zones. Princess Zarathix studied the tactical displays that were beginning to populate the screen. The proposed intercept zones were all in regions of space that most civilized species avoided, areas where technology became unreliable and navigation was dangerous. You want to fight the most technologically advanced threat in the galaxy in the most technologically challenging environment possible, she said slowly. I want to fight it where it's weakest, Sarah replied. Every battle the entity has won, it's won by turning its enemies' strengths against them. But, in a place where technology is unreliable, where advanced systems malfunction randomly, where navigation requires skill rather than AI assistance, in a place like that, human adaptability becomes the deciding factor. The princess considered this for a long moment. Everything about the proposed strategy violated her training, her experience, and her instincts. But, everything about this war violated the conventional wisdom of galactic civilization. Very well, she said finally. I'll recommend the preemptive strike to the Council. But, I have one condition. What's that? If we're going to fight this battle using human doctrine, then, humans are going to lead it. I'm recommending that you be placed in command of the joint fleet. Sarah looked surprised. Princess, I appreciate the confidence, but, you have far more experience commanding large space fleets. I have experience commanding fleets that operate according to logical principles, Zarathix replied. This won't be that kind of battle. This will be organized chaos on a scale that no one in the galaxy has ever attempted. And, humans, apparently, are experts at organized chaos. The communication ended, leaving the bridge in contemplative silence. Outside the viewport, they could see the lights of hundreds of ships, the greatest military force in galactic history, now training to fight using tactics that seemed to contradict everything they had ever learned about warfare. In 8 months, they would learn whether humanity's unconventional approach could succeed where technological superiority had failed. The survival of every advanced civilization in the galaxy depended on the answer. The Helix Nebula system was a graveyard of stars, a region where gravitational anomalies and electromagnetic storms had torn apart what was once a thriving stellar cluster. It was exactly the kind of place that advanced civilizations avoided, where sophisticated technology became unreliable and navigation required intuition rather than computer assistance. It was also, according to Dr. Elena Vasquez's calculations, where humanity would make its last stand against the entity that had consumed half the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the command ship Defiance, watching the greatest military force in galactic history prepare for a battle that would determine the fate of every advanced civilization. Around her, representatives from 63 species worked side by side, their advanced command systems replaced with human-designed hybrid technology that looked primitive but functioned reliably in the nebula's chaotic environment. Admiral, called out Princess Zarathix, who had accepted the position of second-in-command with a grace that Sarah still found remarkable. Long-range sensors are detecting gravitational distortions at the edge of the system. The entity has arrived. Sarah nodded grimly. For the past 3 months, they had been preparing for this moment, retrofitting the galaxy's most advanced warships with weapons and systems that could function in the nebula's interference-heavy environment. The transformation had been unprecedented, requiring entire fleets to abandon the technology that had defined their civilizations for millennia. Signal all ships, Sarah ordered. Implement Protocol Chaos. All advanced systems offline, all AI assistance disabled. From this point forward, we fight like our ancestors did, with skill, courage, and a willingness to improvise. Across the fleet, thousands of ships began shutting down the very systems that made them formidable. Quantum computers went dark, exotic matter weapons powered down, and AI-assisted targeting systems switched to manual control. To any outside observer, it would have looked like the fleet was systematically disabling itself. Contact from the Stellar Dominance, reported Lieutenant Commander Torres, a human officer who had been serving as communications coordinator. Princess Zarathix's ship reports all systems converted to hybrid operation. Sarah activated the fleet-wide communication channel. This is Admiral Chen to all ships. Today we face an enemy that has conquered every advanced civilization it has encountered. It has done so by turning our strengths against us, by using our own technology as a weapon. But, today, we refuse to give it that advantage. On the main display, the entity finally came into visual range. It was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, a massive, constantly shifting construct that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its surface rippled with patterns that hurt to look at directly, and long tendrils of some unknown material reached out in all directions, probing space for technological signatures to consume. Visual confirmation of the entity, reported Commander Theclon from the sensor station. It's significantly larger than our projections indicated. Sarah studied the readings. The entity had grown since their last intelligence reports, incorporating the technology and resources of additional consumed civilizations had allowed it to expand to truly enormous proportions. It was easily the size of a small moon, with energy readings that defied conventional measurement. Size won't matter if we can't be targeted effectively, Sarah replied. All ships implement evasion pattern Delta. No synchronized movements, no predictable formations. Every captain flies their ship like they're the only one out here. The order went against every principle of fleet coordination that galactic civilizations had developed over thousands of years. But, as the human-trained officers had learned over the past months, conventional wisdom was exactly what the entity expected to encounter. Admiral, Princess Zarathik said quietly, "Are you certain that abandoning all coordination is wise? Without synchronized fire control, our weapons will be far less effective." Synchronized fire control requires prediction algorithms, Sarah replied. And prediction algorithms can be infiltrated and subverted. Better to have 1,000 ships firing independently than to have the entity turn our own coordination against us. The entity began its attack with the same systematic approach it had used against every other civilization. Waves of energy erupted from its surface, designed to penetrate and disable the advanced shielding systems that most galactic species relied on. But the fleet's hybrid shields, powered by simple fusion reactors rather than exotic matter generators, held firm. First wave intercepted, reported Torres. The entity's bombardment is being absorbed by our simplified deflector arrays. It's adapting, observed Zarathix, watching as the entity's energy patterns shifted. The second wave will be calibrated to penetrate our current defenses. Then, it's time to show it something it's never seen before, Sarah said. All ships implement Murphy Protocol. The Murphy Protocol was perhaps the most radical innovation in the human approach to space combat. Instead of trying to maintain perfect system efficiency, ships were deliberately designed to function with multiple simultaneous malfunctions. Backup systems had backups, and every critical function could be performed manually if necessary. As the entity's second wave struck the fleet, ships began taking damage, but, instead of being disabled, they continued fighting with reduced capabilities. The quantum spear, hit by an energy beam that should have destroyed its power systems, continued operating on emergency batteries and manual controls. The Kyler vessel Crystal Symphony lost its main engines but used maneuvering thrusters and gravitational slingshots to maintain combat effectiveness. The entity appears confused, reported Theclon. It's firing at targets that should be disabled, but they're continuing to function. It doesn't understand redundancy, Sarah explained. Every civilization it's fought has tried to build perfect systems, efficient, streamlined, optimized. But perfect systems have perfect failure modes. When we build systems that are designed to break down gracefully, the entity can't predict how they'll fail. The fleet began its counterattack using weapons that the entity had never encountered. Instead of exotic energy beams or quantum disruptors, they fired kinetic projectiles, massive tungsten slugs accelerated to near-light speed by magnetic coils. The projectiles were guided not by AI targeting systems but by human intuition and alien reflexes that no algorithm could predict. Direct hits on the entity's forward sections, Torres reported. But, it's beginning to adapt its defensive patterns. Sarah had expected this. All ships, implement Randomization Protocol 7. No ship uses the same attack pattern twice. The battle became a chaotic dance of unpredictability. Ships fired from unexpected angles, used creative combinations of weapon systems, and employed tactics that violated every principle of efficient space combat. The hive-mind vessel Unity of Purpose began spinning end over end while firing, creating a spiral pattern that no targeting algorithm could follow. The hegemon battleship Logic's Edge used its emergency attitude thrusters to skip across the nebula's gravitational fields like a stone across water. But the entity was learning. With each exchange, its responses became more effective. It began firing spread patterns to compensate for unpredictable movement, and its energy waves started adapting to the fleet's simplified shielding systems. "Admiral," Zarathix said urgently, "we're taking increasing casualties. The Crystal Symphony has lost primary life support, and the Deep Current is reporting critical hull damage." Sarah studied the tactical display. The entity was slowly overwhelming them through sheer persistence. For every adaptation the human-trained fleet made, the entity found a counter-adaptation. It was only a matter of time before their unconventional tactics were no longer enough. "Signal Dr. Vasquez on the persistence," Sarah ordered. "Tell her to implement the Hail Mary protocol." Princess Zarathix looked alarmed. The Hail Mary protocol was a theoretical last-resort strategy that had never been tested in combat conditions. It required the fleet to do something that no military force in galactic history had ever attempted. "Admiral, the Hail Mary protocol will leave us completely defenseless for over 6 minutes, Zarathix protested. If it fails, we were going to lose anyway," Sarah replied. "But, if it succeeds, we might just win this war." Across the fleet, ships began implementing the most radical tactical maneuver ever attempted. Instead of fighting the entity, they began deliberately exposing themselves to its attacks. Shields dropped, weapons powered down, and defensive systems went offline. To the entity, it must have looked like the fleet was surrendering. But, hidden within each ship's hull were packages that no galactic civilization had ever thought to weaponize, the one technology that humans had perfected during their darkest hour. Nuclear weapons. Thousands of them, each one disguised as routine equipment and shielded in ways that the entity's sensors couldn't penetrate. "Entity is approaching to optimal range," reported Torres. "It's positioning itself to begin the harvesting process." "Wait for it," Sarah whispered, watching as the massive construct moved closer to the apparently helpless fleet. "Wait for it." The entity extended its harvesting appendages, preparing to begin the systematic extraction of technology and knowledge that had doomed every other civilization. But, instead of finding sophisticated systems to absorb, it found something much simpler. "Now," Sarah ordered. Thousands of nuclear warheads detonated simultaneously, not as individual explosions but as a carefully orchestrated chain reaction that had been designed by humanity's greatest weapons physicists. The explosions weren't meant to destroy the entity directly, they were meant to create something that no advanced civilization would ever consider using as a weapon. An artificial supernova. The concentrated nuclear fusion created a brief but incredibly intense stellar event that flooded the entire system with electromagnetic radiation, gravitational waves, and exotic particles. The entity, which had adapted to counter every form of advanced technology, had no defenses against the fundamental forces of stellar physics. "Entity showing critical damage across all sections," Theclon reported, his voice filled with amazement. "Its structural integrity is collapsing." But the entity wasn't finished. Even as its main body began to break apart, it launched thousands of smaller constructs, seed pods designed to escape and rebuild elsewhere in the galaxy. "All ships that are still operational," Sarah ordered, "intercept those pods. Don't let a single one escape." The remaining ships, battered but functional, engaged in a desperate chase across the system. Using their hybrid engines and manual piloting skills, they hunted down the escape pods one by one. Princess Zarathix personally piloted the stellar dominance through a debris field to intercept the largest group of pods, her royal training in aerial combat finally finding a practical application. The battle lasted another 4 hours, but, eventually, the last escape pod was destroyed. The entity that had consumed half the galaxy was finally, completely eliminated. Admiral Dr. Vasquez called from the Persistence, "We're detecting massive technological reactivation throughout the Outer Rim. Systems that the entity had suppressed are coming back online." Sarah allowed herself a moment of relief. They had won. Against impossible odds, using tactics that violated every principle of modern warfare, they had actually won. "Princess," Sarah said to Zarathix, "I believe you have a recommendation to make to the Galactic Council." Zarathix smiled, the first genuine smile Sarah had seen from her since they'd first met. "Indeed I do. I recommend that humanity be granted not just membership in the Council, but a permanent position on the Security Committee. The galaxy needs guardians who understand that sometimes, the most sophisticated solution is the simplest one." As the fleet began the long journey home, Sarah reflected on the strange turns that had brought them to this point. A year ago, humanity had been considered too primitive for galactic civilization. Now they were being recognized as the species that had saved it. "Admiral," Torres reported, "we're receiving congratulatory messages from across the galaxy. Every member species of the Council wants to send delegations to Earth. And, Admiral," Princess Zarathix added with a slight grin, "I believe I owe you an apology. When I first met you, I said that you were finished. I was wrong about who would be finished." Sarah laughed, remembering that first confrontation in Conference Hall 7. It seemed like a lifetime ago, when the greatest threat they faced was political rejection rather than galactic extinction. "You weren't wrong about everything, Princess," Sarah replied. "You were right that humans are impulsive, emotional, and prone to self-destructive behavior. You just didn't realize that sometimes, those are exactly the qualities you need to save the galaxy." In the aftermath of the battle, as reports came in of civilizations throughout the Outer Rim beginning to rebuild, one thing became clear: the galaxy would never be the same. The entity's defeat had not just saved advanced civilization, it had fundamentally changed how that civilization thought about technology, warfare, and survival. And, at the center of that change was a species that had once been dismissed as too primitive to matter, but had proven that sometimes, the most important weapon in the universe was the willingness to think differently when everything else had failed.